Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of That Early Childhood Nerd. I'm Heather Bernt-Santy, recording this episode on the 8th anniversary of the first time I recorded ever one of the episodes. So, yay,
Yes, I
Samuel
saw
Broaden
that.
and
Yes.
Kisa Marx are here for what
Yes.
I didn't realize was the special event. I was so excited and so knew nothing about podcasting. Um, and Tiffany Pearsall was my first co-host. And she
Mhm.
was like, should I just do, she was a pro, like, should I just do like a backup recording? And I was like, yeah, if you want to. And I absolutely had not recorded anything. So it was really good. So,
Good old Tiffany.
I know I would like to say I learned, but I didn't. Zoom is just easier.
Yeah.
I wasn't using Zoom then. Okay, so thank you
Right.
both for being here.
Of course.
I'm going to let you each talk about yourselves a little bit. I'm going to start with Kisa. So just what you want listeners to know about you. Why make your case for why they should listen to you. Get ready, Samuel, because you're
Well,
next.
I have new things to add to my
Yeah.
list, so I think this is great. I've been on here before. Thanks, Heather, for having me again.
Mhm.
I love the show so much, and happy
Hey,
anniversary.
thank you.
My, you're welcome. My name is Kisa. I have a small play and nature focused nonprofit early childhood program in Oak Park, Illinois, and I am an newly found anti-bias, anti-racist curriculum designer,
Ooh,
which was amazing.
wow.
And yeah, my lens has always been that of someone who is, you know, pro uplifting Black children. And I think that's all I really want to say. Like that's very important to
Yeah.
me. So and giving ourselves some space for our voices to be heard, because there are a lot of places that just kind of erase our point of view, our narrative, our experience. And so um stepping in with the bullhorn that we all have as child advocates, but then saying, hey, there's another point of view you're missing. And doing that's very important to me.
Yeah, thank you. Which is why I love having you around.
Yeah.
Okay, Samuel, how about you?
Okay, my turn. Let's see. I'm Samuel Broden. I've been working with children my entire adult life and even before then. I am originally from the West Coast, now living in Texas. I am the founder of Honoring Childhood. I offer support, consultation, resources, and training to teachers, families, parents, anyone that works with or has young children. I believe in just thinking differently and more deeper about the work that we do, shifting our ideas. It doesn't always have to be the same sort of things that we've been taught to do with children our whole lives. It's
Mhm.
okay to reflect, take in our own experiences and think a little bit differently. And yeah, I think that's good for me.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad you're both here. Reflection, it's a big part of the book we're about to talk about. And I know you've talked about it with me before, Samuel. It surprised me that it didn't just like come naturally to everyone to be reflective. And
Yeah.
I like that was part of my own reflective journey was
Hmm.
understanding that it probably didn't come naturally to me either, right? I just suddenly got there and felt like I'd always been there. But
Mm.
for a lot of people, this is a new way of processing and a new way of moving through the work, the idea um, of deeply reflecting in the way that you both talk about. So we're
Yeah.
here because you guys just wrote this book, Rethinking Weapon Play in Early Childhood: How to Encourage Imagination, Kindness, and Consent in Your Classroom, right there. Um,
Yes.
which people can, if they're watching the video version, can see I'm enjoying it with all the little tabbies on the side. Um, I heard, Samuel, I heard you talk about this at IPA USA a couple of years ago. And
Yes.
then just in other conversations, Kisa, I've been able to kind of hear your thoughts on it too. It is one of those topics that I have changed my mind about and continue to learn about. And so this is really an interesting read as you share your own journeys in that way. But I'm
Yeah.
going to start with just like the first sentence or the first bit of the introduction as our quote, because I just
Cool.
couldn't pick one. that I felt like there was too many. And so I thought, well, I'll just start with the beginning. I've heard that's a very important place to start.
Yes, well.
Something. Sound of Music, shout out. Okay, so you said, weapon play is a very sensitive topic in early childhood, and many people have very strong beliefs about this type of play on both sides. I want to start by saying that the goal of this book is not to get anyone to change their mind on weapon play. The goal of this book is not to have everyone who reads it go back into their programs and give all the children guns and let them go. The goal of this book is to help support you in thinking differently and more deeply about the work you do, the reasons why you do and say things, and what it all means. And I laughed when I read that part because I did have someone say, so you're suggesting we set up like a weapon play area in our classroom?
Yeah.
No?
Ammo over here. Yeah.
but
and that's exactly why it's in there. And that's exactly why it's in there. Because like that's always like, I feel like when people are like really against this, that's always, when people are against something and you try to say like, try this, they always have to do like the most extreme like response to it.
Exactly.
And it's like, all right.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you a question here in a minute, but that reminded me of one of the things I did. And I think this isn't a section you wrote, Kisa, but you wrote the issue. The first issue is that the story about weapon play is based on binary thinking. Binary thinking happens when nuanced ideas, concepts, behaviors, and problems are simplified into an either or perspective. And I feel like that's where that like most extreme other view comes from, is we can only imagine never allowing it or losing control of it. Right. Yep. So my question is for both of you, and you can fight over who gets to answer it first. Just like in a nutshell, what brought you to the place that this was the book you wanted to work on? I mean, I know that's a big part of the book, so you can't give me every nuance, but like a quick, what brought you to this as your topic to write on?
Yeah, so I mean, kind of like you said a little bit earlier, like it's something that I've talked about for a while, and it's also something that I've completely shifted my mindset on. Just over the last like 4 years or so is really where I started to shift my mindset. And so just thinking more about it and speaking more about it and speaking to other people about it and just really kind of still continually shifting my thought process through it. I just was such a proponent for not only this type of play, but for the conversation that is around this type of play and the things that can come from the conversations around this type of play. And so I always knew that it was something that I wanted to write about and I wanted to get other people to think about. And, I mean, I'm just incredibly blessed that Kisa even said yes when I brought this idea to her and was willing to like go on this really wild journey, because it is quite a journey, writing a book and getting it out. But I'm just so blessed to be able to have her kind of on that journey and conversation and just, in our work together, like helping me to kind of, again, continually shift my process just from her words and her experiences.
Yeah. All right. Kisa, how about you?
So for me, how I came to it was through play. As I evolved and moved from academic centered to play based, and I saw all these like healing aspects of play and how you can evolve as a person, how I was healed through their play. And I started to think, oh, well, I could see them processing things. I could see them working things out. And then I had this big experience with a child where it was a Black child playing. They were having a little weapon play. And I just shut down. I couldn't even process what I was seeing. Like all I could see was reality. And as I kind of broke that down and unpacked what I was feeling, that it had nothing to do with the child, and thinking about what the job of play is, I was like, why is this the thing we're stopping? Why am I stopping this? So it did have a lot to do with reflection. I had to stop and think, this has nothing to do with this child. If I stop him, in the middle of his play, or stop them in the middle of their play, what am I saying? That my feelings, for something they know nothing about, reign supreme. And so that helped me shift. I started shifting from that moment.
Yeah. And it doesn't get, at least in my experience, I have not yet reached where, okay, I'm fully confident now in what I think about this play and how I will act about this play. It's been in flux for probably 6 or 7 years, as I've shifted my thinking around. And one of the things that the book talks about is our own discomfort and our own values coming through in these ideas, about what children can and can't play. But what you just said, one of the things that I thought about early on was about Erik Erikson, because I'm a theory, I'm a nerd and love the theory stuff. And that stage of initiative versus shame and guilt, right, is where most of our children are, that 3 to 5 year old range, when we're working with them in these early years. And if the big task of those years is, do I have good ideas, and if I take action on my ideas, will that be accepted, or should I be ashamed of the ideas that I have? And that's one of the things that really clicked for me. Like, I was sending this message that you should be ashamed for even having that idea to play.
Yeah, that's a really shitty idea you have right there. Like, no, we shouldn't do that.
Yeah. But it comes from me, right? I am sort of anti-gun and a pacifist, and I wasn't right in the spot yet to see this has nothing to do with that. These are children playing.
They're playing.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with it. In my experience, I don't know if I would call myself a pacifist, but I did grow up with a lot of guns. And so I was scared of them. And so I never wanted to be around them. And so when I think about, I was just telling a lady in the store the other day, she saw my book. I was turning my books in, and then she's like, "Oh, it just makes me feel so uncomfortable, even when children play with their fingers." And so I recalled a story when a kid was shooting, and they just like got willy-nilly with their fingers, and how I was like ducking and other. But those are fingers. Like, there are no bullets in there. But just the way we process it, we go overboard.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've got a couple of kind of deeper dives I want to ask you to go to. But first, next question, I guess, then, is what's your case for getting past that discomfort? We've mentioned a couple of things about why it's important to make this shift, but can we dig deeper into that a little bit? And I'm going to ask you to go first this time, since Samuel went first last time.
I think it's the way that we get anyone else's perspective, as we will learn more about ourselves if we look outside of ourselves. Once we start to understand what other people are doing, why they're doing it, what worldview they have, then we can kind of unpack, because it's hard to look in when, let's say we have a lot of repressed things, right? So we have a lot of junk that's in there, and we're trying to bury it deep down. But once we're watching somebody else process, all these other things come up with us, and we try to make it make sense just by relating to the other person, if that makes sense. So that's my take, is find out someone else's point of view. Find out what the kids in the rural areas are doing. Find out how they go out to hunt, and how their parents have, they have trust in them. And they want to educate them and show them what to do, and how these are little children and they're able to do it, and nobody goes up and shoots up the school or anything else. They trust them enough to know that this is the way to keep them safe, is by teaching them these things. And so if you're thinking, like, it's not always this horrific situation. And I think our fear is what makes us think, if I allow them to play, weapon play in any form, then I'm telling my child it's okay to hurt other people. But that's not what you're doing.
That's not really what's happening.
Yeah. So just take in other people's point of view, other people's perspective. Okay, so I'm afraid because I came from an area where there's a lot of crime. Well, what about these kids that know nothing about that?
Mm-hmm.
They're still playing the same games, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they don't have that point of view. So just constantly looking outside yourself and trying to connect the dots
Mm-hmm.
will help you. Reflection is very, very, very difficult. And if you're a reader and you've always been a reader, then it might help because you're always kind of reflecting and thinking about different perspectives. But what about those people that are like, I don't care for reading? They don't do that. And if it already doesn't come, reflection doesn't come naturally, that'll be hard. But if you just ask somebody their point of view,
Mm-hmm.
why do you think that way? And see if you can get somewhere.
Yeah.
That'd be my take.
Yeah. Thanks. Okay, Samuel, how about you?
One of the things that I think is great about what we talk about in this book, this idea of reflecting on both our experiences and others, is that it's not only applicable to weapon play, right? We can take that idea through any piece of our practice and in our own personal life. And so for me, the idea of like working through these maybe uncomfortable things or working through our reasons why we say no, and getting down to this idea of self-reflection, for me it was, I need to spend time thinking and really understanding what it is that I want the children in my care to experience.
Mm-hmm.
What type of experience do I want them to have? And really spending time in reflection and thinking about that. And then that way, when things are happening, when I'm saying things, when I'm telling them things, whatever it is, I can look at that and I can say, is this in line with what experience I'm wanting them to have? And if it isn't, what can I do to change it? And a big part of that is thinking about this idea of saying no and why it is that we're saying no. And a lot of times, if we really spend the time to reflect and think, 98% of the time that we're saying no, it's because of something that's coming from
Mm-hmm.
us, and that's it. And
Yeah.
so we really just have to think like, do I want to change the experience these children are having, right? Do I want the children to experience something different than I did? Do
Mm-hmm.
I want, like, what is it that we actually want for the children? And if we actually want that, then these are the things that we're going to have to do. Because Kisa's right, self-reflection is really, really hard, which is part of the reason I think, like Heather, you said, a lot of people don't do it or won't
Mm-hmm.
do it or can't do it because it is really hard.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times when you reflect back on, like, hey, let me think about my own childhood, a lot of times that's not a great
Right.
thought process, thought time to have.
Right.
And so we don't want to have that, right? But if we want something different for the children that we're caring for our own children, for the children in our community, we owe it to them to do that so that they can have a different experience, so that when they are adults, they're not struggling to reflect, they're not struggling to think differently, they're not having these same sorts of struggles as we do. And so for
Yeah.
me, it's really, really difficult, but it just comes down to what it is that you want, what it is that you truly want for these children, and what it is that you're willing to do to help make that happen.
Yeah.
And can I just jump in one
Yeah.
second? I just want to add that we want to emphasize it's what you want for the children, because like you said, that 98% leads. We lead with
Mm-hmm.
that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's, what do you want? I don't want those kids to do that. Period.
Yeah.
They shouldn't be playing that way. But we want to get beyond that and think about how we can censor the children. What do I want for them?
Uh-huh.
That changes everything.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, I 100% agree with that, but I think there are people who would say, well, I want them to be safe and not be violent. So then we have to go a little bit deeper, like,
Mm-hmm.
because those are valid things to want, right? For children.
They are, but do they really apply? Are
Yeah.
the children being violent?
Yeah.
Or are you putting that judgment on them?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because think about it. I mean, this type of play is just what children are going to participate in, whether we say no or not.
Mhm.
And also, in our self-reflection, if you think about it, a lot of us probably participated in this type of play when we were younger,
Yeah.
right? I know that I did. And so thinking about it in that term as well, right? Like those are things that I did. That's how I played as a child sometimes.
Mhm.
And did that mean that I was violent or I was
Yeah.
going to be violent? And I think that Kisa's point of this whole like us pushing our own ideas of what this means onto them when they have literally no idea. That's our idea, not
Right.
theirs. They have a, and Kisa and I were talking about this the other day about something else, but it's like they have a completely different thought process and a
Mhm.
completely different
Mhm.
mindset than we do. And we're pushing these things on them instead of just taking that step back and being like, all right, is this on me? Like, is
Mhm.
this me doing that? And again, that's gonna be uncomfortable and
Yeah.
that's gonna be hard to do, but it's one of the responsibilities that we have when we
Right.
take on this role of working with children.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
not to
think
sound callous, but true. That it's what we signed up for.
right.
We
Mhm.
signed up to say that we want to center the child. In 98% of the time, it's an us problem and
Yeah.
not a them problem.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've done
Mhm.
a lot of interviewing as a program director in a couple different
Mhm.
settings, and I never had anybody come into the interview and say, "Well, I can't wait to crush children and just really grind them into
Yeah.
compliance and
Mhm.
make them fit the system." Everybody
Yeah.
comes in with
Get
these
ready for
lofty,
therapy.
yeah, and but that, in practice, that's exactly
Mhm.
what happens so often, and I
Yeah,
Mhm.
certainly have had times in my career where I was that way. But
100%. Yeah.
I think
Totally.
about
Mhm.
one place I worked where I was the teacher, and there were it was a 2-year-old classroom, and so the spaces are small, right? Like talking about how we played when we were children, the three of us.
Mhm.
I mean, I can't speak to you, but for me, I was in the
Mhm.
I was outside. I had
Mhm.
like space to play this
Mm.
way and freedom to play this way, and people weren't, I didn't have to be in sight and sound 100% of the time. But
Mhm.
now, so children aren't changing necessarily, but the contexts that we put them into have changed. So I think about this
Absolutely.
tiny
Mhm.
classroom for 2-year-olds, and these boys were actually 3 and waiting for room in the next class, to open up,
Mhm.
how it happens.
Mhm.
And they just wanted to do superhero play. They just wanted to be not even like violent. They just wanted to be like Superman and Batman and
Mhm.
climb a lot and chase each other. And everybody was so concerned about this, and their behavior was bad. And we've got to get them into something more positive. So we started like trying to force them to be firefighters and police officers instead because they're helpers. We weren't paying attention to what the
Mhm.
children were really doing in their play. We were
Mhm.
projecting all these assumptions like you're talking
Yeah.
about. And once we got away from that and thought maybe it's just about the chase, maybe it's just about the movement, maybe it's just cooler to be Spider-Man than to be a
Yeah.
firefighter.
Mhm.
Maybe I just have more
Mhm.
context with Spider-Man so I can pretend in different ways. With the
Mhm.
fireman, I only have the fire truck and the water or whatever, So I think
Mhm.
that's such a great point that you have so many places throughout the book that we have to look and see what's really happening, not what we assume is happening. And to do that, we
Yeah.
Mhm.
have to pause a little bit
A lot
ourselves.
of it.
Yeah, a lot of
Mhm.
And
it.
that pause is so hard too.
Yeah.
It
That
really
pause is
is.
so
Yeah.
hard to do. And like it's very, very difficult to do. And I think that it's interesting, just even then in that little story that you told about, you know, we want them to be less we want them to be less violent. So let's have them come over here and play and be police officers. Like that's a
Look,
whole
I was
that's a
like, wait a
whole
minute.
that's a whole other
Whole other
conversation.
Yes.
episode.
That's a whole other episode. But
Yes.
that's the point, right? It's
Yeah.
like, but there's also so many wonderful things that children learn through that type of play.
Yeah.
This idea of good and evil and all of these things that we want the children to learn. And so that pause is really important. But
Yeah.
again, like you really, for me at least, it took, even now, it takes conscious effort to
Yeah.
make that pause and step back. Even now, with this idea, with other ideas, it's a constant evolving thought process, and it really takes you having to be like, I need to
Right.
pause and step away.
Yeah. We really do need to be strong for the children, right? In those moments. I haven't worked directly with children for a few years now, but even in my most recent preschool experience, there were days when I stopped it because I didn't have the energy to explain it to the other adults around me.
Mhm.
You know what I
Mhm.
It's
mean?
that part.
Yes.
Yes,
Look,
yes.
reflection doesn't always have to be this deep dive into our psyches and our secrets. It can also just
Mhm.
be, why did I stop that? I don't usually
What?
stop that kind of
Yes.
play.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
This is unrelated. I mean, kind of related, but you reminded me with your story. Around the winter, I had 2 3-year-olds, and for whatever reason, the couch wa- was just they just love to run around it.
Uh-huh.
And I found myself like every time they're like, "Oh, slow down, walk a feet. Oh, we can run in the basement, we can run outside." Oh, and then what? And they just kept doing it more and more and more. And then finally, I was like, "Why am I doing that?
Mhm.
If they can run in the basement and they can run outside, they can run right here."
Mhm.
And once I stopped trying to control everything they did,
Yeah.
then they were like, "I'm over it. I don't
Mhm.
even want to do it anymore."
You ruined the fun, Kisa.
I
Yes.
ruined the
Yes.
fun. But it was
Yes.
like, why do I
Yeah.
need to stop this?
Hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nobody was falling. They were being safe.
Yeah.
It wasn't hurting anybody.
Yeah.
It's just
Because
what
you
we
were
do.
playing teacher. We all
I
get
was
into that script
playing
of playing
teacher.
teacher.
Yep.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Walking feet,
Definitely.
you
So
Yeah.
know?
there's another part here that kind of ties to what we were talking about a minute ago that I want to read.
Mhm.
It says weapon play and its cannon-toting cousin power play are about efficacy, bravery, heroism, and empowerment. And children, even those who live in high crime areas like I did, Kisa, I'm assuming this was your section, are
Mhm.
playing out scenarios just like they do in all the other forms of play to make it make sense to them. I loved that idea of putting the strengths in there,
Mhm.
not just
Mhm.
here's what happens when we stop it, but here's what
Yeah.
happens or could be
When we
happening
don't.
when we don't.
Mhm.
And I think that's
Yeah.
so important to talk about efficacy,
Mhm.
bravery, heroism, and empowerment. Like what do you wish they hadn't had?
Yeah. Right, right. Why do we need to stop this? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think everybody, because we lead with fear, and that's the way our brains are wired,
Hmm.
we want to keep ourselves safe,
Hmm.
then we never pause long enough to look at what are the benefits. What is my child when the children are, doing big body play, what are the benefits from this? When they're climbing that tree and risky play, what are the benefits?
Hmm.
We're always like, oh, they'll break their arm, they'll shoot your eye out, you'll do this, you'll do that. And none of it is focused on, oh, that's good hand-eye coordination. Oh, this is good for their executive functioning.
Uh-huh.
Nobody does that. And so we
Hmm.
need to stop and start thinking about what are they benefiting? How is this benefiting them?
Hmm.
Just do a little
Yeah.
with risk benefit analysis when they're
Yeah.
doing whatever it is they're doing.
Yeah, and so I suppose that even is not a binary, right? There's nuance in that
Hmm.
conversation too,
Yeah.
but you also wrote later, or the book also says later, the unintentional harm we do when we are not developmentally informed is astonishing. And I thought that was such a powerful and brave sentence because we have do no harm in our ethics, right? But we sure don't want to talk about the possibility that we do harm.
Mhm.
We do
So I
harm.
wanted to bring
Yeah.
that out too into this part of the
Mhm.
conversation.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And maybe that's also a good because we have to talk about the race elements of
Mhm.
this conversation too. So I'm going to throw those two things out and see where you guys want to go with them.
Okay. You want to start?
Yeah, Samuel
Yeah.
can
I
go
mean,
first this time.
I think it's interesting too because that idea of like recognizing that there could be harm in what we're doing. Again, that's a difficult thing for us to
Right.
say or for us to admit because we all hopefully we all get into this field for the right reasons, right? And we want to do the right thing by children. We want to give them a great experience. We want to do all these wonderful things, and so having to sit and understand that maybe there's things that we're doing that are not getting us to that goal can be a really difficult thing to do. Um, and it's not easy, and it's something like you were saying, like it's something that's ongoing.
Hmm.
It's something that we're always going to be thinking about. It's something that we're always going to be shifting. How can I do better? How can I do this? Right. It's kind of taking that first step of being like, I need to be open with whatever I'm doing, whatever is happening, whether that is good or whether that's bad. I need to be okay with that.
Mhm.
And I need to move through that. And I think that being able to have those conversations with the children, being honest with them about our feelings, what we're working through, is a good thing, because look how hard it is for us to think about these things and talk about these things and work through these things. Probably because growing up as children, we were never taught to think differently, to work. It's okay to think this way and learn something new and think different. You know, all these things that we work through now. And so again, it's that idea of like, what do I want for them? Okay, I want this. This is what I need to do. Here's what I want to show them so that they can kind of have a different experience.
Mhm.
Yeah. My take is if we give ourselves grace
Mhm.
in the, process of evolution, we know we're going to mess up. This is just what happens in the human experience.
Mhm.
So that doesn't mean that it won't sting. That doesn't mean that you won't be heartbroken when you realize that you did some kind of unintentional harm
Mhm.
by playing teacher, by doing the things that you were taught the way that it had always been taught. But it's also the gift we give to our children, right?
Mhm.
If I can say I did this the wrong way and those kids are gone, I can't fix it with them, but I can commit to doing right by the children I'm caring for now.
Mhm.
And I've done as much as when I learned better and I could see, oh, I didn't do this with such and such. I have gone and contacted those parents who had no idea, and like, I was
Yeah.
reading this and I was thinking about this, and I wish I could have served blank better.
Mhm.
We can always make it right. We can't make the situation right, but we can, make amends in
Mhm.
whatever way possible. And we can definitely do it by serving the children better in the future, by advocating to, by teaching their parents, or if their parents already know something, guiding them toward the direction of learning something more.
Yeah.
And that's it.
I
Just be
think,
good to yourself.
yeah,
Yeah.
I often think about the things that are dehumanizing to children, but I
Hmm.
think this is where we need to think about what's dehumanizing about those teacher scripts for the adults
Yep.
too,
Yep.
right? And just what you're talking about, just being real with yourself and giving yourself
Hmm.
grace and knowing that
Mhm.
no one is perfect. Even if you've read all the things, it's a different thing to then go do all to do all the
Yeah.
things.
And even when
Um,
you've done all the things, you
there'll be a
regress,
new
or you
thing.
might have a family where you
Yes.
a minute of loss of control,
Yeah.
and then
Yes.
you revert back to the teacher script.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about, let me share this maybe as a segue. One of the things that I didn't think about when I first started changing my mind on this, I mean, honestly, I was like, oh my God, I'm so great to change my mind about this. Look at me. Just really proud of myself for that.
Yes.
And I was doing, some kind of assignment during my graduate work about weapon play. And I don't, I post everything on Facebook. I must have posted something on Facebook. And one
Mhm.
of the current parents that I was working with at the time, and they were white parents who had adopted a black daughter. And she came into the conversation and she said, I'm terrified all the time. This is a different conversation for me. Because that was like when we were seeing violence against black children for not having a gun or having a water gun or having
Mhm.
Skittles, in their pocket or whatever it was.
Mhm.
And that hadn't occurred to me in my little white bubble over here, farm girl bubble.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And so I think that needs to be part of this conversation too, is just you cover it in the book very well, of course, but for the people listening here, what do we need to think about in terms
We,
of, is it different for children who are black or brown?
mhm. It's 100% different. We have a double standard in
Uh-huh.
America, right? There's the way that the world lives, and there's a way the Black and brown children live, especially Black children, because Black and brown children, children of the global majority, they do get it, but it's different. It's altogether different. And so there's a disproportionate number of Black children that are harmed by gun violence. For whatever reason, whether it's injustice with police officers, whether it's violence, but we're at the mercy of gun violence a lot, right? However, that doesn't mean that weapon play is out for them, because then you're excluding them again. You know, I felt a way about the cover of the book, because I didn't want Black educators and Black family members and things to see the child and think that they're not mentioned in the book, because it's very important for you to know this isn't just play, reconsidering or rethinking weapon play for everybody else but Black people. They can't do that because they're from high crime neighborhoods or because of injustice. No, all children can. All children need to process big things. All children need to make sense of good and evil, and in their thoughts of power. To say that Black children or brown children can't have that experience is actually doing them harm. So I want for this to be a conversation for all children. And that means casting aside where you live. It doesn't matter if you're in a high crime neighborhood. It does, because we're not telling you to go under your brother's bed and get the gun out from the mattress. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about little kids playing a game. And you can have a separate conversation about safety. You can have a separate conversation about crime, social justice. But their play has nothing to do with that. We're putting that in there. And we're putting the racial, I don't want to say the nuances, because it's not, it's binary. You're saying white kids can play this way, but Black kids cannot. And that's not the way it goes.
Yeah, I think those are just the hardest questions for me, because I know the parents, it's that protective urge. And so it's not only kind of advocating against for this play against the teacher script, it's against every urge the parent has.
Every urge and
to
every
protect their child.
protective urge. Yeah. I have 3 male children, right? Male identified children. I don't know why my words are escaping me today.
Because you put them all in the book.
I did. But raising them, the entire time, your anxiety level is on 1,000, the entire time. And so writing this, I shared this with Samuel a lot. I had to stop and call my mom a lot. Like, I don't even know if I can finish this. This is, it's too much. It brings up too much. So for the parents of a Black child, Black parents, any child of the global majority, for them to say, this frightens me. I'm going to be like, same, sis, same.
Yeah.
This is a frightening conversation to have. Do we still need to have it? Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm going to throw it to you for a minute, Samuel, because conversation is something you write a lot about in the book, and having these kind of challenging, uncomfortable conversations, and see what would you add?
Yeah. So honestly, like I was a lot like you, Heather, at the beginning when I tell the story about how this whole idea came to me with the children in my classroom, and when I got to the point where we were playing weapon play, I was like, oh, I'm like literally the best. This is like the best thing ever. I'm about to someone's about to make a statue of me. Like, I'm gonna
just
tell
give
this
me the
story to
award.
everyone. I'm the best. And I was so excited and telling it to everybody. And of course, I'm telling it to my husband, who is Black.
Mhm.
And he was like, "Oh, that's cool. But that's kind of like a
But
privileged stance that you're taking." And I was
Mhm.
like, "What?" I was like,
God
"What?
damn
No,
it.
yeah, yeah, literally, exactly." And he was like,
Yeah.
and he brought it up because in the classroom of the children that I talk about in the book, there was one, boy who was Black in that class, and he was the only,
Mhm.
I think he was the only Black person in the entire school, but
Mhm.
he was in my class. And my husband had come to my class lots of times and had hung out with them. And he always made a point to like hang out more with this boy, right? To like have that connection with him. And he said, "Well, what about him? Like, are you thinking about, just the privilege that comes behind you being like, yeah, let's do it. This is awesome." And so
Mhm.
being able to have his experience be told to me and be
Mhm.
able to have those conversations with him where I was like, "Oh wow, like you are right, and there is a lot more to think about." And again, that's another really uncomfortable thing because
Yeah.
a lot of us don't like to, first of all, we don't like to talk about those things, right?
Right.
But then second of all, we really don't like to talk about things where it gives, we have a feeling that it's something bad, right? That we're doing, that it's something against us by him saying that, right? When it's
Uh-huh.
like,
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
girl, it's not about that at all, right?
Yeah.
So being able to kind of have that open dialogue with him, like, really was able to open my eyes a lot, just from his own lived experience, not just as a child, but his lived experience his entire life and now as an adult, was really able to open my eyes more. And then, going through this process with Kisa as well and having conversations with her throughout this and reading the things that she was writing, like, it really, I don't know, it was helpful for me to be able to make sure that I'm recognizing the privilege that I have in the conversations that I'm having.
Mhm.
And that's a huge part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so um I mean, I think that's another thing that makes reflection hard for some of us. I know it's true for me. Um, is having to sort of come face to face with oh man, I thought I was finally perfect. And then I didn't even think of that.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, and then
But we
being like
don't know
embarrassed
that.
and ashamed of not thinking of it myself.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
We can't we can't know other people's lived experience unless they tell us, right?
Yeah.
I have to say this is important to me that Perry, Samuel's husband, came from the same side of town as I
Yeah.
did.
Oh yeah,
So when we
yeah.
first met, we just instantly clicked because we
Mhm.
have that same lived experience.
Yeah.
And so for him to see that, that would be the same thing that I would see. I would walk in there, and the first thing I would think is the first people you need to talk about before you say, "Hey, this is how we're playing," is their parents.
Mm-hmm.
Because the minute those parents walk in and see a bunch of little white kids chasing their
Yep.
Black child and shooting them,
Yeah.
they're
Mm-hmm.
going to have a huge problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And
sure.
so there needs to be a conversation with those parents.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
They're
Yeah.
not going to see it the same way.
Yeah.
They're going to see it totally different.
Right. And I think this is another example of a time when we could do some managed expectations from the beginning. Maybe if we just
Yeah.
have clearly, like I used to do this with biting when I was a toddler teacher. We would, any parent who came who brought their child to us before they even got into our space, or infants before they got to the toddler room, they would have something from me about how like biting's a developmental reality. Um,
100%.
Here's what
Yeah.
we do and try and look for, but the
Mhm.
reality is it's going to happen because these are, children of similar skill sets and deficits,
Mhm.
spending long hours
Mhm.
together in a way that we weren't evolved to be. Um,
Yeah.
but I think rough and tumble play, I did the same thing, and weapon play. I think if there's something, it doesn't mean that you're not going to have big emotions as it plays through, but everybody from the beginning kind of knows.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
Yep.
and maybe they make a choice then.
Yep.
This
Mhm.
isn't
And
for
just like you
me.
would give out, oh, I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
How you would give out like a why we play letter,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
What you do is you're educating the
Hmm.
parents. So if they don't understand, if they have questions, they can see this is to be expected.
Mm-hmm.
When I walk in, my heart won't stop because I don't understand what I'm looking at,
Right.
because I've already read about it and I've already know about
Yeah.
the importance. Or maybe it's something that you talk about in your open house. Your
Yeah.
child will be dirty. Your child will take risks.
Yeah.
We will have weapon play, and let them ask the questions then.
Yeah.
And put it in a newsletter.
Yeah. Yeah. Multiple ways of delivery, right? And then revisiting. It's not just once.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
you signed off on it 4 years ago.
Right.
Yeah. It gets, it gets so messy. But you know what you're doing there is advocating for yourself as a professional too. Like this isn't just Heather thinks this is a good idea and Heather's a little weird. It's
Right.
she has thought this through. This is developmentally informed and developmentally responsive, and it ties into the whole philosophy. It's not just me not caring enough or whatever. And I think that's big. When we can do those kinds of things.
And it's also saying what I would think is somebody who didn't have that lived experience. It's also saying, I see you. I don't know all the answers, but I am the expert on what's developmentally informed. And so I can tell you that part, and then we can work through all the rest.
Yeah.
You come to me with your concerns, and I'll come to you with my knowledge, and we'll meet halfway.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's like a true partnership, a true engagement. It's not when I say I want family engagement, that means bring cupcakes when I tell you it's your snack day, or make sure your diapers are always full or whatever. It's this kind of deeply kind of at least attempt to be deeply respectful and collaborative when it's a tricky subject. And showing them the respect up front that I respect your children, and that's why this is the way we do things, and I respect you, and that's why I'm talking to you about it now.
Yeah, and
I would
Kisa
start my newsletter like that.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Sorry, Samuel.
No, you're good. No, I was just gonna say, Kisa, you said something earlier just about, watching children in play is healing and can be healing for a lot of us, right?
Yeah.
By having these conversations and opening this up to the families as well, we could be doing that same thing for them, right? When they don't have space to do that. And by opening this up, by saying, I don't understand your experience, but this is what I know. I'm here to support you. I'm here to listen. I'm here to work through things with you. All of these things, right? That can also be a healing thing for them as well. And so it's just this connection that comes from all of that is just it's just really beautiful.
Because we know how isolating it can be when your children are little and you're just learning, and there's so many things that you don't know, and you're walking
and so
around.
Many mommy groups on Facebook.
Oh my gosh,
they're telling you all the wrong stuff. And so to have someone who is a subject matter expert, right? Listening to you, seeing you, valuing your opinion. Like, you belong here. I want to hear what you have to say. And so, I think that could be very, very healing for a young parent. Any parent.
All right. We're at the point of the podcast where we all just say,
Good answer.
So we are getting close to an hour, but is there anything that you were hoping to get into the conversation that we haven't talked about yet, either one of you?
I was really hoping that, I think the thing with the book is that some of the whole topic is kind of taboo in every space.
It's very popular at conferences, but very taboo in the real world.
The real world, applying it.
Yes.
And so I was afraid that when we started talking about it, that we would leave out like the big black elephant that is standing at the door. And
Yeah.
so yeah, we covered that. So I'm good.
Yeah. Okay, good. Well,
Yeah, no,
thank
this is
you.
great.
Thank you both for this book. I did what I don't usually do, and I scheduled a recording before I'd actually finished the book because I just knew once I got into it, I was like,
Yeah.
the rest of this is going to be okay. And I know both of them.
Yeah.
So thank you for the book. And I'm going to we'll have information in the show notes about where to find more of each of you for people who want to just chase you down online, and where to buy the book. But I really appreciate you doing this work and both being here to talk about it today.
Thank you.
I appreciate you reading it and wanting to talk about it.
Yay.
Yes.
All right.
It feels so
Love you
good
so
to
much.
like know that like our ideas and the things that we wrote, like people actually want to like hear us talk about and actually care about it. You know, you like put so much time and effort into it. It's like, okay, it's out. Is anybody gonna care at all? And so being able to like actually have people like, let's talk about it. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, well, thank you for both being here. Thank you both for being here. Do what you want with those words. And thanks everybody for listening to another episode of That Early Childhood Nerd. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.